everybody, and welcome to Glam Danesa special edition about the Catrina, La Catrina. So many times in Mexico I have seen the Catrina, a very fancy dressed skeleton lady. She is such an important part of Mexican culture and the most famous symbol of the Mexican Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. You see the Catrina in many forms of happy skeletons and skulls dressed up in fine clothes. Today I'm exploring the origin of the Catrina. Therefore, I have traveled to Aguascalientes in central Mexico, where it all began. And I have allied myself with Mexico's greatest Catrina expert, the doctor in fine art from the University of Guanajuato, Miguel Høeppermann. He is going to show us around in the José Guadalupe Posada Museum. I'm so excited. Hey everybody, I'm standing in Aguascalientes now with Miguel Høeppermann. And Miguel here is a researcher of the Catrina. You see it everywhere in Mexico. And now today we are finding out its origin. What are you going to show us today?
El Museo Guadalupe Posada, que Posada es el más importante artista gráfico de México.
We're going to go into the museum and see it. So exciting. This is José Guadalupe Posada, a statue of him. Miguel just told me he was an artist that was doing engravings, and the Catrina was the most famous of his artworks. Now we're in the museum of Museo Guadalupe Posada, and he made this Catrina. Garbancera was the first name that Catrina was called.
El nombre completo sería sandungueras, garbanceras, gatas.
Like
Porque,
cats?
y en ese sentido te voy a explicar cómo cambia de garbancera, gata, sandunguera a creer que es o a suponer que es una Catrina.
So later in the museum we are going to discover more about who this Catrina is, because she's a woman with lots of mystery about her. Shall we go in? Here's the museum, and he had a very interesting life with many events going on, and in his whole life he made 1,500 engravings.
Esta es la etapa cronológica de la vida de Posada. 3 barrios de indios y uno de españoles. Este es un barrio español.
He was from the barrio San Marcos. I see that he was born in 1852, and then he was working and making cartoons, and he already got some inspiration from sculpts and other things I see here as a sculpt, and this guy, he was making some really funny political cartoons everywhere, and first, way later, looks like a Catrina appeared.
De hecho, la Catrina es su último.
1913. So how can I be in Aguascalientes at the same time be in the middle of Mexico City? Oh, because I'm standing in the middle of a map made by José Guadalupe Posada, because he was a graphic designer. He made many other things than drawings. See how small Mexico City was at the time. It was like only downtown is here.
En este trabajo te topa, vas a ver que tiene blancos, negros y grises. La anatomía del caballo es canónica. Posada recibe una estupenda educación renacentista. Su maestro estudia en la ciudad de Guadalajara con el libro del Tratado de la Pintura de Leonardo da Vinci, y él le enseña con técnicas de Leonardo da Vinci a Posada.
You can see how professional this guy is because of the lines in the picture and the movement.
2, 3, 4 líneas. First plan, second plan, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 plans.
You can see there's perfect balance.
Yes. Tiene una traducción del arte europeo a América. Si observas, cada una de las calaveras tiene una identidad, una individualidad. Y a partir de esa individualidad, cada una de ellas es distinta. Eso pertenece al arte romántico y al barroco. México, en su construcción espacial, es barroca.
story behind this is that Miguel de Cervantes was a writer, and he made the character Quixote, that was a hero riding on a horse fighting an enemy. And José Posada made his own version because he was famous for his caricatures. And he was the one who scratched this.
Yes, this is ¿cómo se dice? Esa es la placa en la cual se
made.
burila. Y el proceso de creación de las placas es muy interesante. En una de estas placas, en un solo trazo, en una sola, se tiene que burilar. No hay dos oportunidades. Entonces se toma la placa y él se tiene que sentar a hacerlo. Y si hay un error, se tira la placa y se empieza a hacer nuevamente.
So this is the original stone of the picture. This is a stamp, and here we have the original newspaper where it was put like this. So if you make one mistake when you are engraving this, you have to do it again because you only have one try.
Esta es una imprenta típica de las que utilizaba Gutenberg, una versión más moderna.
Describing some social situations at that time about the revolution. So to see the museum is also to get to know a lot about this revolution in a kind of neutral way with all of the famous figures from that time. Yeah, some other famous persons from the revolution, and he's showing how the president was looking like, and there was written some articles about him. Party sculpts. Why do Posada draw so many sculpts all the time?
La fiesta del Día de Muertos es una fiesta que viene desde el México precolombino, desde antes de Colón. Cuando llegan los españoles, la fiesta del Día de Muertos se vuelve mestiza con la tradición española. Con la tradición española cambia y en el México independiente es la única, no es la única, pero es de las cosas que sobreviven desde el mundo prehispánico.
So the reason why Posada was so inspired by sculpts, I guess, comes back from the origin. The Indians had a lot of sculpts.
Los personajes del Día de Muertos pasamos del ritual precolombino a la fiesta más moderna de México, en la época de la Revolución, y entonces todos los personajes que están en una lucha de clases, pero también una lucha de modas, se ven ridículos. Y lo que hace Posada es mostrar sus neurosis, su ridiculez por pretender ser de otra cultura.
In this newspaper, Posada made a drawing, an engraving of Catrina, And this was 2 years before the actual Catrina, well-known first drawing of Catrina, was printed. This little figure here is actually a Catrina. This is Diego Rivera's version from the 1920s. And he painted himself as a kid, and he painted, of course, Catrina and Frida Kahlo and Guadalupe Posada here. And of course, what we came for, here is the original Catrina portrait that he made. That is a symbol of this indigenous woman that was climbing up in the social stairs, and she was wearing this French hat that was a caricature of how they dressed at that time in France. In a way, as I understood it, is he's making fun of that. Yeah.
Pero esa es la parte de minucious details. Oh, so beautiful! This is a big ass artist. La historia de este personaje es la historia del bien y el mal de México, la historia del racismo, la historia de sus migraciones, la historia de la violencia hacia indígenas, es la lucha de clases en su sentido más vasto. Una garbancera es una mujer indígena que dejó de comer maíz y frijol para comer garbanzo. Es una síntesis de toda la cultura mexicana. La gente indígena, la gente mestiza, la gente negra, la gente blanca. De hecho, ya no es correcto decir gente negra, son los afromexicanos. Pero es ese mestizaje que la cultura mexicana tiene en sus genes. En este momento, políticamente, tenemos que entender que era la forma en que este impreso, este post, se ríe de todas las pretensiones de la cultura mexicana, de esas mujeres que no quieren pertenecer a su clase social y se están riendo. Posada elabora el dibujo, el grabado. En la imprenta hay quien escriba. Si queremos entender el grabado, es en una sociedad analfabeta, el título, la imagen y el impreso. El analfabeto va a la imagen. El que medio sabe leer y escribir va al encabezado. Y el que sabe leer y escribir va a todo el texto.
Another interesting thing is actually that at this time this was printed in the newspaper. Posada was actually dead. He just made this right before his death. This was printed in 1913. And the essence about this Catrina is he was sitting and looking out his window and saw people walking by, and he was drawing cartoon figures of them, making fun of how they were looking and trying to get the essence out of what was behind that look. What was behind that look was that he saw these indigenous females with the dressed like they were French upper class when they were not, and that was very funny in his eyes. And all the sculpt things that he has, this sculpt theme, is because it's coming back from the Indians' time where they had this culture about sculpts. I think that this character, even she was not called Catrina in 1911, it was already shaped within him here when he was drawing this painting from 1911. So someplace between 1911 and 1913, he was making this engraving that later was printed. At the time it was printed, he was actually dead. He actually never knew how famous he would become from this engraving. And in general, it's a little tragic because he made 1,500 other amazing engravings, and he never got all this fame that he actually deserved and that he got later after his death. But that is a general thing for artists, I guess, that they always become famous after they die. Thank you so much for all this information. It's so interesting to learn more about Catrina and her origin, because it's so important for Mexican history.
Nice to meet you.
Muchas gracias.
Welcome to Mexico. Welcome my culture. Welcome
Gracias.
the Mexican heart.
That was so interesting, so much information and amazing story about Catrina. This was an amazing museum. Come, now we go out. As I understood, the essence of Posada's Catrina message was that sooner or later, death will take away our costumes of vanity, and we are all equals, and underneath we are the same skeletons and skulls. Thank you so much for watching, it was as always a great pleasure. Thank you to Miguel Høppermann for showing us around in the museum, it was so interesting. I will leave you links in the description below to know more about Miguel Høppermann's work about José Guadalupe Posada. Thank you so much to the Posada Museum in Aguascalientes. I can really recommend you to go and see. It was such a great museum with so many pieces of art. Like and subscribe to my channel and see you guys very soon for new adventures. I love you.